also the airport. That is when it was just called Temeri Airport or something. And he more or less said, I think I asked him something about how long it would last because it's paint in the open weather. He says, somebody will come and do something better or something like that. Which is quite a profound statement that he didn't expect it to last forever. He expected that somebody would improve on it. And in a way, I put down these things. I did something on militia, I did something on national service, I did volunteer force, and I always hoped that somebody would come and do better. But
Well,
that's not the story.
that's the scholar in you, where you're laying as a public scholar, you're laying a foundation for others to build upon. What is happening with the
Or
national
knocked down.
or knocked down, but it is a public intellectual activity. What has been happening is that Amabel Clement, which is a former pioneer, has been pushing this exercise to document. So you have really an exercise in oral history taking place. She's got Norman, she's got Joe, and she's talked to Desmond. Then plus the Pioneer Corps and former members are bringing photographs.
A huge corpus, a huge
Yes,
body of
yes.
knowledge.
So your contribution here is adding to that. The ultimate destination in this work is maybe a documentary on the national service. But in the interim, in time for May, my students at Ohio University, with their counterparts here, are using the I Want to Build album. Each one of those songs speak to a particular location, and would use that as the framework to tell this wider story. And that one, which would be a digital online exhibition, one of 7, will complement the symposium, will complement the literary festival, and will be part of that sustainable body of data that would ultimately maybe create a virtual museum of Guyana, where the diaspora and folks at large, wherever they are, can just go up there, get it, and experience. So your conversation is crucial in this. Let me start off. In Guyana Review, which you've piloted, in December of 2008, you wrote, "Born in controversy in 1974, the Guyana National Service was dismantled in controversy in 2000. Today, the debate seems never to end. You've had a special relationship with this institution. You are active in its conceptualization, its introduction, and possibly its future. Could you walk us through the early moments of conceptualization and planning? Speak to your role and those of other key personalities of that moment."
The idea came out of the work that I was doing with, at that time, Prime Minister Forbes Burnham. And we were together on the East Coast MRI, and he expressed deep concern about the growing unemployment among young people, particularly in the East Coast. And I recall his words to me. He said, "David, we must do something for these young people." And that was the basis of it. It was youth unemployment and the desire on the part of Forbes Burnham to give them the type of education and training to reintegrate them into the world of work and give them a second chance in life. After that, that must have happened, I think, in maybe late 73. Something called, we spoke again, and he had a very clear idea, and I tried to operationalize that idea. Of course, at that time, as a professional military officer, maybe I was persuaded that that was a form in which young people could be organized to receive the type of education, the type of discipline that would fit them for adult life. At the same time, of course, as a military officer, I was aware of the territorial problems and we conceptualized a scheme that was based on the Israeli kibbutz, in which we have settlements on the borders. So I was happy to be given the opportunity. I became part of the planning unit. At that time, Melvin McDavid was the head of the planning unit. I was the military planning officer. And I think it might have been like October 73, we started working on the plans. Eventually, other persons came on board. There was a Julian Mayfield, and then Rajkumari Singh. It was a very small unit. We occupied the building in Boda and Regent Street. It was the former Labour Exchange building. And I stayed there for about 10 months. And after which I returned to the Army. I was never a member of the National Service proper, so I don't claim membership, but I was part of the planning unit. During the period of planning, we reconnoitered premises at Kimbia, which is part of the Bobby Savannas, and we also looked at Papaya. Well, it wasn't called Papaya then. I'm not quite. I think a chap called the administrator then was Mr. Henry Cameron, and there were some schemes, some intentions of going to other places like New River and even Pacaraimos. But I admit that I was conscious of the logistical difficulties of moving too far away from either a river or a road, based on my military experience. So I was quite leery about having too many centers, scattered around the country, given our expected challenges in terms of logistics and transportation and everything else. So I was able to design the plan. The plans was submitted to President Burnham and the cabinet. And shortly afterwards, teams were sent to several countries. I went to Guinea and Somalia. Another team went to Tanzania, and I think one might have gone to Cuba. To look at the youth training services in these countries. And we came back, and in fact I discovered that the design that we had, the architecture, was more appropriate to Guyanese needs and was in no way inferior to what was taking place in those other countries. And in fact it turned around that some other countries started to copy our system. In fact, eventually there was some organization of national services, and people from the Caribbean came to see our national service. So I believe we had a good model, certainly for mobilization, education, training, and preparation for settlement. So I would say that my familiarity with the service really spanned the first 10-month period, which is the planning period. And in around about July 74, I left, and I think Major General McLean was appointed Director General, and Desmond Roberts was appointed Deputy Director General. I must say that as part of my planning work, I envisaged the fusion of the Guyana Youth Corps into the National Service. The Youth Corps, of course, was based at Chumachimari, but it was never large enough to take on the large number of potential members, persons who needed to go to the service for education and other purposes. And I'd gone to visit one or two sites that the Youth Corps had attempted to settle, particularly one at Seabai in the northwest, not far from Port Kaichuma. If I can go back, if I can maybe go on a parallel track now, the Youth Corps was established on the basis, I've written it in my little book, on the basis of recommendation of somebody who came down here under the auspice of the United Nations to deal with youth unemployment. Youth unemployment. So both that study by Mr. Landor and Prime Minister Burnham's intention, both were to deal with the issue of youth unemployment. And the focus is always on, my focus at least is always on education for employment. I don't want to make a comment about what happened after I left, it would be unfair, but I would say that the policy that was envisaged was for young people. In fact, the first name that I had coined was GNYS, Guyana National Youth Service, and I have a very distinct impression of seeing a felt pen of a certain color drawn through the Y. Leaving GNS. Because it came from the Youth Corps, and the actual symbol was actually put together by an artist who died. He used to be at the Bordeaux School of Art. How could I forget his name? Anyhow, the flame was taken from the Youth Corps.
Okay.
The two arms were taken from a stamp, which was popular at that time. They were, I think, six arms forming a sort of a pattern showing national unity. And in one arm there was a stalk of cane symbolizing agriculture. The other arm there were some buildings, chimneys symbolizing manufacture. And in the middle were the three letters GNS. So if you look at the GYC symbol, the Guyana Youth Corps symbol, you'd see that it was the mother of the GNS symbol with some improvements. I remember the name of the artist. I don't know, he always seemed old. In fact, he did a painting. Anyway, I'll come back to that. But the symbol was a fusion of the old GYC symbol and the vision of national services, contributing mainly to the agriculture, manufacture, and education for young people. We put together an organization. The military parentage was clear to see. The uniforms, it was not meant to, at least, I remember having to defend the national service at various fora, because coming after the 1973 events, they were suspicious of anything that came out of the government, and there was some resistance even before it was announced that national service would be compulsory. The original architecture did not provide for coercion, any form of compulsion. It was meant to be voluntary. And some people were taken by surprise when it was announced that it would be compulsory, and it was linked with free education at the time. But at the time of the actual, conceptualization of the service, it was not considered to be compulsory. The colors were taken from the national flag, green and gold, and eventually the colors changed slightly to slate gray, but the first uniform was a pretty bright green. But it was they were meant to be colors of the national flag. The shoes were black. The caps and uniforms were green. And if you look at the flag, all 5 colors of the national flag are in the national service flag: black, scarlet, white, green, and gold. And that was deliberate. Kimbia turned out to be the first center. Barima Construction Company was contracted, and we designed a model barrack room. Again, that's a little battle, because having lived and trained at Takama, I knew what the savannas were like in the afternoon, particularly after the sun got up, um, because it was, could be very, the heat could be unbearable. I used to call it the Sahel, the Guyanese Sahel. And I had a battle to get verandas built on the buildings. But Burima was quite good, and we had a model. I think it was designed like to have maybe one platoon or something like that. I think it might have been 30 persons, and there were 10 persons per toilet. I remember that, insisting that a toilet should not be provided for a larger number than 10. um, I'm not sure what happened with the building code after that. And we got some good cupboards at first, and everybody had a bag with all of the clothing and equipment. And the layout was done by Aubrey Barker Associates of Kimbia. We had a person whose name I wouldn't call for the record, who sat down on a Land Rover bonnet and just drew a grid of what the camp should look like. And of course it's quite, I don't know, maybe he thought he was drawing it on a sort of coastal flat plane. But eventually we got trained town planners there, and they looked at the contours to see where the water was running. And I think that modified the layout that had been conceptualized. So all of that started. The first set of recruits, the first set of pioneers came in. There were several corps: Pioneer Corps, Cadet Corps. I'm not sure when they were recruited, but we had some orientation training. And when I left, the buildings were now going up and people were just coming in. And I think the service was not launched until 1st of October, 74. I'd gone by July. So much of the development of national service, what took place at a place like Papaya, I was completely unaware of. Kariri, all I know, and Kanaruk, all I know is about the start of Kimbia and the architecture.
One of the things with National Service uniform is that it had name. You had your name on it. Was that a deliberate decision?
No, I was not at that stage. I said when I left, we had just gone into green.
Okay.
I think they moved into a different color, slate gray, and the naming. I was not part of that.
Okay.
I was part of the flag. I was part of the emblem, and the first green uniform, and the actual structure of the buildings. But I think much changed after I left, because this is the first 10 months.
That's right. Your Excellency, one of the things about national service is that it's taking place at a very important time in this new nation, a period that some historians have characterized as the period of decolonization. How did that discourse about decolonization as a South idea, how is that being operationalized in the national service in terms of curricula, etc.?
Well, the main thrust, as always, was on education, and we were lucky that time to have a government which introduced national service in the form of a state paper, which served to alert the National Assembly and alert the general public about the policy. So rather than just taking a bill to Parliament or just setting up a thing, there was a period of formal familiarization. And this took place, as you said, it was just after we became a republic. And that event was used to change the political culture of the country. And you're quite right, it was a period of decolonization. Now, this is a very difficult concept to explain, um, but in my view, from what was taking place in the Defense Force and I would say the philosophy that I carried over into the National Service, it was certainly one of the most important developments ever to take place in this country. Because when we became independent in 1966, people did